Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. For the first time since the beginning of the invasion, Russia appears to have closed out a crucial gap that it had in comparison with Ukraine, that of surveillance satellites and intelligence gathering. On the 27th of May, Moscow launched the Condor FK radar surveillance satellite. And according to the Russian military department, this high-resolution satellite will be used entirely for military purposes, and it will scan the entire territory of Ukraine twice every single day for military installations. And what this means is that Ukraine will have no place to hide the Western military weapons that are being pumped into the battlefield. Weather phenomena such as rain, thunder and clouds will not affect the radar capabilities of this satellite. And what is worse, the undisclosed weapons caches that Ukraine presently has at this moment will all be exposed. But how good are these Russian surveillance satellites? And can they really change the course of this war? Our next report gets you the details.
Operation for second engine start.
The role of surveillance satellites in modern wars cannot be overemphasized. All through last year, Elon Musk's Starlink had grabbed the headlines for changing the surveillance game and providing the Ukrainian soldiers for the eyes in the sky to hit at Russian military targets with pinpoint accuracy. And now, Russia is taking the game a few notches higher. The Condor FK radar surveillance satellite that was launched by Moscow on the 27th of May using the Soyuz 2.1A rocket will change the surveillance game of the Ukraine war. Consider this: placed in a sun-synchronous orbit at an altitude of 500 kilometers above the Earth's surface, the Condor FK satellite will be used entirely for military purposes. Twice a day, the Condor FK satellite will scan the entire Ukrainian territory for military installations with a resolution accuracy of less than a meter on the ground. What this means is that the military supplies and the route of supplies coming in from Western Europe to Ukraine stands completely exposed. Ukraine can no longer hide any weapons from the Russians, and this can potentially change the course of this war. On the 6th of June, the Russians struck at an ammunition base in the city of Kupiansk using their FAB-500 air bombs. What was also struck was an ammunition depot of the 14th Mechanized Brigade involved in the combat operations in the Svatov region. With these type of challenges, Kiev is understandably squeamish about openly declaring its counteroffensive.
This is not true. Our military will decide when it starts, depending on the situation at that particular moment on the front lines, on contact lines at various places. After full analysis of the situation, appropriate decisions will be made. The Russians got scared here or there and they thought it was a counter-offensive. I do not see any point in commenting on what these sick people say. Look, when we start the counter-offensive, everyone will know about it, they will see it.
But Russia, which at the moment is scrambling to destroy the Western weapons that have been pumped into Ukraine, insists that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is already underway.
What can I say? First, we can state for sure that this offensive has begun. This is evidenced by the use of strategic reserves of the Ukrainian army. That's the first thing. Second, the Ukrainian troops have not achieved the goals assigned to them in any sector. This is absolutely obvious. There have been 5 days of intense fighting. For example, over the past 24 hours and the day before. So for the past 2 days, there has been very intense fighting. And the enemy did not achieve any success in any sector.
The Ukrainian counteroffensive is going to be a test of the technological superiority of weapons as much as it is going to be about tactics and strategy. On the 16th of May, Ukraine had showcased what has been touted as one of Russia's most potent hypersonic missiles. Kiev claimed that it had shot down one of the 6 Kinzhal missiles which Russia had fired the previous night. But it soon emerged that Russia had been successful in destroying one of the American-supplied billion-dollar worth Patriot missile defense system. The top-notch German-made Iris-T air defense system that has been guarding the Ukrainian skies by downing dozens of Russian projectiles in the last 6 months has also sustained some serious damage. On the 7th of June, Russia reportedly managed to destroy the TRML-4D radar of the IRIS-T air defense system with the help of a Lancet kamikaze drone. Russia is also testing out its Sirius reconnaissance strike UAV to counter the MQ-9 Reaper attack drones that have reportedly been sold to Ukraine for just $1. The destruction of the Novokakhovka Dam is just an indicator of the things to come. As both Russia and Ukraine continue to trade accusations on who really blew up the dam, what is clear is that neither side will stop at or adhere to a red line in this war, no matter the cost in terms of life and property that will have to be paid by the common people. On the 6th of June, Iran unveiled its very first indigenously built hypersonic missile called Fatah. And if Iranian claims are to be believed, then Fatah can travel at hypersonic speeds of well over 15 times the speed of sound and can pierce through pretty much any missile defense system that presently exists. For Iran, the Fatah hypersonic missile is a generational leap. The missile has a range of 1,400 kilometers and is said to be highly maneuverable. But what has troubled the many Western security analysts are claims that Iran's hypersonic missile can strike the state of Israel in less than 400 seconds, leaving very little room for even Israel's Iron Dome to detect and intercept the Iranian hypersonic missiles. So what impact will this new Iranian hypersonic missile have on the geopolitics of the region? Our next report gets you the details. Missiles that fly faster than Mach 5 or 5 times the speed of sound are categorized as hypersonic missiles. A lot of ballistic missiles too fly faster than 5 times the speed of sound. But what sets apart the hypersonic missiles is their mid-flight maneuverability and their ability to take a random and unpredictable path, making it almost impossible to intercept a hypersonic missile. On the 6th of June, Iran exhibited to the world its very first indigenously built hypersonic missile.
This knowledge of missile making and science and defense, as well as missile and military industries, have been indigenous in our country. It is not an imported technology, so threats cannot remove this advanced knowledge and industry.
Iran's hypersonic missile has been named Fatah, which happens to be one among the 99 names of Allah, and it literally means the opener or the revealer. The Fatah is a precision-guided, 2-stage, solid-fueled rocket with a range of 1,400 kilometers and a top speed of Mach 15. The movable nozzles at the front allow the missile to be maneuvered in and out of the Earth's atmosphere in mid-flight, making the possibility of interception extremely difficult.
At a distance of 1400 kilometers, we can accurately hit any target we want and no anti-missile system can deal with it.
As the crow flies, Israel is well within the range of 1,400 kilometers. But what has created unease amongst the Western military analysts are claims that Fatah will be able to strike Israel in less than 400 seconds. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant was quick to dismiss the threat to Tel Aviv. Saudi Arabia, which deploys the American-made Patriot missile defense system, has often struggled to shoot down even the crude missiles of the Houthi rebels. Iran is just the 4th nation, after Russia, China and North Korea, to have unveiled a hypersonic missile. But will Iran's Fatah missile tilt the balance of power in West Asia? This is the question whose answer will be explored in the many months and years ahead. When do you describe an incident of violence to be a terror attack? Now think about this. On the 8th of June, 4 young children were stabbed in a park in the southeast of France. In some very graphic video footage that has since gone viral on social media, a 31-year-old man is seen prowling around in a little park looking specifically for children to attack. Eventually, this man was tackled down and was arrested by the police. In recent years, France has dealt with a spate of knife attacks. But the question is this: why has France not been able to clamp down on knife attacks? And is it even addressing the problem correctly?
France was shocked by a gruesome attack on the 8th of June. 4 toddlers and 2 pensioners were stabbed at the picturesque Leipzig Park in the tranquil city of Annecy in the French Alps. 2 of the children and an adult are said to be in a life-threatening condition. All the wounded children were aged between 22 months and 3 years. French President Emmanuel Macron described the attack as an act of cowardice, for the attack to have taken place in a small tourist city like Annecy. Unlike the big towns of Paris, Marseille or Lyon, the usual suspects, it's a major cause of concern.
Of course we are worried. How can we not be worried? Especially since, within a few minutes away, it could have been my children. So I think of my children and I say to myself, thank God, they are not my children. But here we are thinking of the children to whom it happened and for their parents. We are not immune. We say to ourselves that it can happen anywhere, any place. But for it to affect the children, we were not expecting that. It's serious.
The suspected attacker, taken into police custody, is a 31-year-old Syrian asylum seeker. He had entered France legally and carried Swedish identity documents, including a Swedish driving license. Certain Christian religious insignia was also recovered from him. Not on the radar of security agencies, his motive remains unclear. He had applied for asylum in France, even though he had been granted asylum in Sweden about 10 years ago.
Yes, it's a troubling coincidence because last Sunday, the Annecy knife attack suspect found out the government's decision of not granting asylum, since he already has it in Sweden, and then he commits this act of crime that is absolutely vile. I really want to send my deep thoughts to these children who today are battling death, and all mothers and fathers think the same. I've been Interior Minister for 3 years. I've seen a lot of very difficult things, but I think this is the worst day for the French because targeting children aged 2 years old, stabbing 2-year-olds, that's unspeakable.
Curiously, French authorities have ruled out terrorism as the assailant's motivation and are now investigating the case as an attempted murder. A number of violent incidents have been reported in France over the past few months, including the fatal stabbing of a nurse in the northern town of Reims last month. President Macron has denounced these recent attacks as a decivilization process, but opposition lawmakers have a point when they accuse his government of being too lax on law and order.
The German city of Leipzig witnessed violent clashes between left-wing protesters and the riot police on the 3rd of June. The call for protest came in the wake of a sentencing of a left-wing extremist to over 5 years in prison. A woman by the name Lena E. was convicted of vigilante attacks on neo-Nazis. Roughly about 1,500 people turned up for the demonstration, and soon the demonstration turned into a riot. Over 50 police personnel suffered injuries and several police vehicles were also damaged. The sentencing and the subsequent protests have triggered a national debate on Germany's handling of political violence of both the left and the right-wing extremists.
How potent is the danger posed by Germany's radical left? This is the question troubling every German after 2 consecutive nights of violent clashes between left-wing protesters and German riot police. On the 31st of May, the Dresden Regional Court convicted Lena E., a 28-year-old alleged left-wing extremist, to over 5 years in prison. Lena E.'s 3 male accomplices, aged between 28 and 37, also received prison sentences. Something of an icon in the anarchist circles of Germany, Lena E. is accused of vigilante violence against right-wing extremists and being part of a criminal organization. The court found that the 4 activists spied on and carried out attacks against neo-Nazis in Leipzig and nearby towns between August of 2018 and the summer of 2020. Responding to the verdict, Antifa and other left-wing groups called for a Day X on social media and announced an escalation of damage to public objects and offices. Sensing the impending trouble, the police revoked the right to demonstrate in Leipzig, the city of residence of Lena E. Permission for a public gathering, however, was granted. Within 48 hours of the verdict, by the evening of the 2nd of June, hundreds had gathered, setting bonfires in the street and pelting stones at police vehicles from rooftops. Violence continued into the night on Saturday, with some 1,500 people gathering in the afternoon, a third of which were estimated to be prone to violence. Concealing their identity by covering their faces, they began to gather stones, which further escalated the already tense situation. All attempts by police to negotiate with the organizers of the gathering failed. Leipzig police spokesman accused the protesters of massively attacking the police. The ugly face of left-wing extremism lay bare for everyone to see and ponder. Given the recent savage turn of events, it would be safe to argue that extremism, whether left-wing or right-wing, poses threat to any civilized society. Germany would do well by nipping this escalating issue in the bud.
At least 16 people have died in the deadliest unrest in Senegal in over a decade. The unrest was sparked off by a prison sentence that was handed out to the firebrand opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. Protesters who took to the streets by their thousands claimed that the charges against Sonko are politically motivated. Supermarkets and gas stations were ransacked, and vehicles were set on fire. The riot police responded with tear gas and what human rights activists have condemned as the excessive use of force. Now, cracking the whip, the government has so far arrested at least about 500 people. But the question is this: why has one of the most stable nations in Africa erupted in such widespread violence?
Senegal is considered a bastion of peace and stability in West Africa. Its laudable reputation, though, has been marred by violent protests in recent weeks. The latest round of unrest was triggered by President Macky Sall's refusal to rule out running for a third term, and by court cases involving a leading rival, Ousmane Sonko. Protesters clashed with riot police in Senegal's capital, Dakar, on the 29th of May. A ministerial building and several cars were set alight, and a major highway was barricaded. Word on the street is that Sall will flout the 2-term limit for presidents.
Well, we are in a country where there is no law. Everyone knows that. And so what happens today and to the President Ousmane Sonko since 2021, what they want is to eliminate him in the presidential race, which we will not accept. Not at all. Because he is more legal than Macky Sall. The constitution is clear on this. No one can serve 2 terms, and since he can no longer be president, all he has to do is go away and leave us with our president. Because he is our youth and our hope, and we don't want to go to America or Europe. We want to stay here.
A former tax inspector, Ousmane Sonko, is immensely popular with Senegalese youth. Sporadic violent protests have broken out across Senegal since 2021, when presidential aspirant Sonko was detained for alleged rape of a 20-year-old woman who worked in a massage parlor. His supporters claim this to be a tactic to bar him from the February 2024 presidential elections. No wonder then that all hell broke loose when he was acquitted of rape charges and death threats, but was sentenced on the 1st of June to 2 years in jail for corrupting youth.
This is why he was convicted. He wasn't acquitted, and today he has to sleep in prison for 2 years and pay $980 in fines, plus the sum of $32,664 to give to the woman he was accused of raping as damages and interest. So we are satisfied. Not totally, but we are satisfied all the same. Because Ousmane Sonko threatened everyone. He threatened the judges, he threatened the state of Senegal, he didn't want to be judged, and he did everything he could to avoid being judged.
In the case, which has deeply divided Senegal, the 48-year-old Sonko was tried in absentia. He has denied any wrongdoing and has boycotted the court proceedings. Sonko's PASTEF party said the verdict was part of a political plot and urged citizens to amplify and intensify the resistance. Responding to the call, riots broke out in Dakar. Violence erupted on a central university campus where property was extensively damaged. Riot police, facing rocks hurled at them, responded by firing tear gas. In a preventative measure, government restricted access to social networks such as Facebook, WhatsApp, and Twitter. Tensions ran high on subsequent days as well after 2 days of most violent unrest in several cities in nearly a decade. Army was deployed to back up the riot police, and heavy security presence was observed, particularly at the banks, French-owned supermarkets and petrol stations, a favored target of Sonko's supporters. International community has urged for restraint and dialogue to resolve the crisis. Will President Sall read the writing on the wall and ensure, as promised, peaceful, free and transparent elections next year?
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the Twitter handle that you see on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.